we're in these conversations, these millions of conversations we're having, the AI is learning how to get to an application faster, or how to get to this prospect who came from Zillow, how do we get them over to taking a tour faster? How do we figure out what platform to communicate across, whether it's text or email or a phone call, that's going to get somebody to pay their rent on time more frequently.
Well, I'm excited. We have an awesome guest here. I went to the IMN conference about a month ago, and my whole point of being there was to find interesting people that I thought had cool stories and were doing cool stuff. And Fran Loftus is in that list of people that are cool in tech and real estate and have done some cool stuff and doing cool stuff. So Fran, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Cool background.
Yeah, so you live in Midtown, New York City, obviously a tech, I don't know call it capital. Yeah, sure. Tech capital of the world, sort of. And also a real estate hub. So that's interesting. Why don't you maybe just give us a little bit of background of like who the heck you are and what you've been doing the last, 5-10 years.
Actually, I remember when I joined Metaprop. We actually, for a minute there, were calling kind of like the Flatiron area here in New York, like Real Estate Row or something like that. So yeah, definitely a hub for real estate technology. Back when we were calling it ReTech instead of PropTech. So I'm Fran. I was a founder here in real estate technology. I started a company called Home about 9 years ago. Wow, 9 years ago, man, that makes me feel old. And we provided a platform that allowed multifamily and some single family and commercial as well, real estate, the opportunity to kind of pick vendors that were going to work inside their spaces, and those vendors could self-orient on our platform. I eventually sold that tech company to what was then called Hello Alfred, which is now just Alfred, about 2 years ago. And now I am at EliseAI, running operations here. And we are a leasing platform, primarily having leasing conversations, and have recently, in the last couple of months since I've been here, expanded into being a full operations platform. So we have conversations generated by AI across not just prospects, so the leasing conversation, the leasing journey, but also residents. So when someone moves in, they're going to get a text from an AI that says, welcome to the property, gives them a little bit of information. They can send maintenance requests through there. And that's the same AI that's going to be reaching out when they are delinquent on rent or need their rent payment link. And then the same AI when they go to renew. So it is a full, end-to-end conversational AI that helps with the operations of a business, of a property. And that's us.
I don't even know where to start. There's a lot. I want to, before we get into the current stuff, I want to talk about, so you build up Home, which you eventually sold into Alfred. Maybe talk through that journey a little bit of, there's not that many people who have started prop tech companies and sold at prop tech companies. And you have at a very young age. What was that experience like?
I guess I kind of fell into real estate technology. I feel like that's most people. You start like a tech company and then you're like, oh, this is actually really applicable to housing. And then you kind of just like, you find yourself in housing. But we started with the concept of like meditation studio, strangely. And it was gonna like it was gonna be brick and mortar, it was gonna have like a tea room, and much like some of the trendy, boutique fitness studios kind of moved towards being meditation studios that kind of got repurposed. We started with that concept and we tested it in a bunch of really high-end multifamily buildings here in New York. And then we really understood the mechanics of amenity management, and how there are all these amenity managers that really look for super high contract values. So they're typically only getting engaged in a project if it's like class A+++, if they're going to be involved in the design process as well as the kind of equipmenting, and they stay on to manage these spaces, but only if they were involved from the get-go, right? And like, it's an incredibly expensive investment for a building. They've got to designate space and they've got to commit to physically building these things out. And like, what if tomorrow golf simulators are not what's drawing people to a building? Like, how do we make this more malleable? How do we make it respond faster to what is actually impacting the retention of these residents in these buildings? And so we kind of made up this like, mobile amenities, utilize underutilized spaces in any kind of class of building. And then it expanded into office where they would have like a floor move out and they were like, let's amenitize this floor until we rent it out. We find a new occupant, and it became really popular having these kind of pop-up amenities that would kind of float around these buildings or throughout these portfolios, especially where they were like campus kind of clustered together. And we had to build a ton of technology to make that work seamlessly. And so it really was, in the end, a solution that worked for a handful of different types of buildings.
That's cool. Is it, and then Alfred's still using it today? Like, it's still part of their.
Yeah. So Alfred has that in their tech stack that you can add on kind of community engagement, and they're using some of the software, or at least they were before I moved over to EliseAI, some of the software for their in-home services too. So some of the wayfinding tools that we had that kind of mapped through the space, or the notification systems we had for the third-party vendors that were going to be coming on site and keeping them up to date on timing and feedback from the actual users. A lot of that was used for their like dog walking services and their home cleaners. And so they added on like in-unit services, the same platform.
Cool. So then you jumped over to EliseAI.
Yeah.
And so you went from, I guess you started to understand the world of running these larger multi-communities, and surely leasing is on the list of things that are important to them.
Yeah.
Now is EliseAI catering towards single family homes and smaller landlords, or is it more trying to be geared towards multifamily type products?
So across the board, we have a single family home solution. Even before we built conversations that were a fit for single family, we had a lot of clients in multi that were doing like build for rent communities, a bunch of single family homes, but obviously, clustered together more like a campus. And so we had a lot of tweaks that we made for those built for communities, that were then like a great platform for us to build on top of to have a full single family home solution. And we have single family home conversations that are leasing, that are resident maintenance, depending on what the integration is. And then also those delinquency conversations are already live for single family too.
Cool. Now, an AI company like yours, and I guess I'm a little newer to the AI stuff, but I catch on quick. So does it use like an AI framework? Is that the right word I should be thinking about? Like that most of these
Yeah.
AI companies are like a framework and they sit on top of it and kind of customize it? And if so, is that how you guys are approaching the problem?
So we train with large language models, which I think is, ChatGPT is a large language model that I think everybody's heard of. If you haven't, you're probably living under a rock. It's very
Right.
popular. But yeah, other large language models too are successful and available for us to use for training our conversations, but we're really goal oriented. So it's not just about having a quality conversation that makes sense. And it's not about giving an answer, because a lot of the goals of these platforms that people are exposed to, the goal is to have you continue to ask questions or come back to this platform. So much like social media, where you may be served maybe not a realistic representation of your friends' feeds, but kind of a curated version of that that's going to kind of engage you more, entice you more to respond or repost or whatever. A lot of these platforms are these public AI models. The goal is to just have you keep talking to them. And so they may be giving you truthful information or semi-truthful information. And what we have over at EliseAI is a real estate AI. So we're in these conversations, these millions of conversations we're having, the AI is learning how to get to an application faster, or how to get to this prospect who came from Zillow. How do we get them over to taking a tour faster? How do we figure out what platform to communicate across, whether it's text or email or a phone call, that's going to get somebody to pay their rent on time more frequently. So it's really like a goal-oriented tool. And so the AI is not just learning how to decipher context from a conversation, but also kind of anticipate what is the next right thing to say to get to this goal.
Yeah, makes sense. How does it, I'm sure you're tracking metrics every day. How does it compare to the human equivalent? Is it beating humans? Is it tying humans?
So even in a world where we weren't performing at the same level as a human, the value, right, to a manager or owner operator is going to be like, I don't have to put somebody in that seat. I can like centralize across my properties and have one person. There's obviously the ROI there, but then we do typically convert at almost double what a human does. And you can think there's no way that AI is going to pull out the same level of context that a human can. And you can recognize that conversations normally go better when somebody who's toured somebody through the property can reference back, like call back to something they talked about on the tour. And there's a lot of sales tactics that are unique to an individual or a human. And so it can be surprising that we can convert at a higher rate. But I think it really comes down to convenience. Like if I am looking for a home while I'm on my commute to work, I have a discrete 25 minutes that I'm going to be engaged in this task. And if you don't get back to me in 2 minutes, I'm probably not going to convert from initial reach out to tour in my calendar for this week. If I'm not getting that immediate reply, right? My commute's done, I'm at the office, I'm working on something else now, and I may completely forget to even check my personal email to see if you replied 30 hours from now. And I think that's the biggest piece. Humans, especially that are leasing up maybe a set of homes, they have other responsibilities like touring somebody through a property, and they can't be immediately available to respond to every reach out from a prospect. And so they just can't deliver that immediacy that is needed to convert people over. And kind of not what we want people to be doing, right? We want people to be very great at converting converting folks over when they have that in-person experience, or we want them to be navigating unique edge cases where, like, is this person going to hit the requirements? They're kind of on the border, like we need a human to kind of step in here and decipher. You kind of don't want them sending the same pet policy that they've copy and pasted 400 times in email across a month. Like, that's not really an enjoyable job for them. And it's not really like what you want to be spending money on having a human do, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Fran, I love that. I think, so I spent a lot of time in sales and marketing in my life, selling and growing lots of different things in real estate and ad tech and all sorts of stuff. I think even leasing, I've leased up to my own buildings myself. And I think I can't say strong enough how much I agree with the time element of marketing and sales can overcome an average salesperson. Like, and if you just are whatever your process is between AI and virtual assistants and maybe an American salesperson, whatever that combo looks like, if you can nail the time element where people are getting back to them right away when they have a question, and ideally following up later, because I imagine that's part of this too, is like post-tour follow-ups, the immediacy of response, and then eventually the follow-up. I'll take someone who's average to below average, and they will outperform high quality, high experienced salespeople, because a lot of times these high quality experienced salespeople, they don't feel like answering the call at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. They're not as responsive. They're not as organized on the follow-up side of things. So I mean, that all like totally makes sense to me. It's interesting. I mean, the fact that you feel like it's like double the conversion rate, that's really fascinating. And what, so I guess
it's like 60 to 100% increase.
Wow, that's crazy. So it's like, I guess the initial goal is set up an appointment or apply. Is that kind of how you structure the
an appointment? An appointment or apply, because we do have a lot of communities, classic New York, right? Where like, we'll go and look at the data. We'll be like, something must be wrong here. There are more people that convert over to an application than to a tour. That can't make sense, because like it's a funnel in all of our graphs and everything. But like, that is how sometimes it works. Like, people will apply sight unseen to communities sometimes. So yeah, it's either one. Yeah, either one.
That's awesome. Are you seeing like long tail, the guy who owns 15 units and is historically leasing himself? Are you seeing this start to help that person out, or are you guys not there yet and you're more focused on like enterprise type clients?
Well, you know, as a bandwidth thing, like we're just over 1.8, I think it's 1.7, 1.8 million units that we're in today. A unit, whether it's a standalone home or whether it's a unit within a multi-building. But so we have a lot of the biggest logos, right? Like, and now for us, it's just about proving value, getting deeper into more markets with them, or kind of looking at different like striations of types of buildings they have, and like really fit conversations to those unique cases. So we're really diversifying who we're talking to. Like, it used to be purely owner operators, enterprise, and that's where the bandwidth was. For us, kind of any scale of partner makes sense, as we try and work with folks that have 15 buildings, 15 independent homes. Maybe it's like a onesie or twosie. For them, it almost feels like this is of more value, because in a gigantic organization, they're talking about centralizing, right? Like, we have a model, we have X number of people in each property, and now we're looking to centralize this. And so it's a tool that is going to only help their operations. But in the case of somebody who's just purchased their 12th single family home, and they're trying to manage this all themselves, and they've just gone past that place where like they can't manage it themselves anymore. A tool like this is a savior, right? Like, this is my next step before I actually hire somebody, because I'm that overflowed now. I'm that person who is the one head count that things are going to get escalated to. And this just took 90% of the conversations that I'm having with prospects and residents off my plate. So for those folks, this is a lower cost option before they go and hire somebody to assist with overflow work.
Yeah, it's great. It totally makes sense. And it sounds like even though the name is Elise AI, maybe you need a new name. It sounds like, right? I mean, it sounds like you're starting to go into like other requests that could come up, like rent collection and, you know, all the various things that could be pinged. I imagine the same language learning can also figure out how to solve other problems too for tenants.
Yeah. It's so funny. Everybody hears our name, Elise, the woman's name, and they're like, oh, it's a fun play on the word lease. Our founder actually named the company Elise, not just because it was a play on Elise, but Eliza was the first AI. And so it's also this ode to like the first AI that existed, Eliza. So yeah, that's funny. But also it's great that it says Elise in it. Yeah. But we're doing maintenance requests. We're doing kind of any resident triaging. So people used to find their way into our leasing conversations all the time. They'd come back to say your AI's name was Hunter. All the AIs are named for each management company, but they go back to Hunter once they moved into the building and be like, hey, how do I pay my rent? Or like, what time does the gym open? Or I just bought a dog and I want to add my dog to my lease. And we would always just, have to hand these things off. And those folks were used to a certain level of response, or level of service, because they get these response times that were so fast before when they were a prospect. And like, now they're living in the building, they're like, why do I have worse service now that I'm paying you? So for those folks, like we've always had to bridge into being able to triage them better. Like, once we'd learn, even if they were a leasing customer before, we'd be like, hey, do you have a maintenance portal that we can direct people to? Or do you have like a welcome guide that we can ingest the information from and we can just kind of answer some of these questions for them? So like our resident solution came so naturally out of like, we were already building solutions to learn some information about how to help these people. And so now we just actively go and say like, save my number. I'm the same AI that you spoke to before, and I'm going to be helpful now that you live in the building.
And the communication, it sits over text message, email, web chat, like it's a multi-prong approach, I imagine. Yeah,
we're everywhere. Web chat was kind of the most recent thing that we built. Folks, I think it can be overstated how valuable web chat is. People will typically come to a property website and only a couple % will actually engage in that chat. What we see most commonly is somebody will be sitting on the amenities page of a website and they'll be like, do you have a pool? And they'll be like looking at the pool. It's like, yes, yes, there's a pool there. But it's kind of funny, like even a well-oriented site, like some people just want to be able to ask the question and not have to like look around for the information. It's just kind of human nature. But we also, like, in addition to the chat itself, have a bunch of widgets. So like self-scheduler and contact us and text with us and all those other widgets too. So we typically see people say like, hey, do you have a pool? And then we say yes, so that they just self-schedule. So kind of those as a set is really helpful. Where you're going to see most traffic is just always, always, always through email, people reaching out through any kind of like listing sites you have. So that's most popular. We've got text, so you can text directly with us. But we also have phones. So we've got voice AI as a solution. One tier under that is kind of like our voicemail. So text with context, we'll say, maybe it'll ring through to the leasing team, say they are not available to pick up, or call center, the number that we have, and they're not available to pick up. The voicemail will be an AI voicemail, and we'll say, what are you calling about today? They'll give us their answer on what they were calling about, what they're trying to get a hold of somebody for, and then we'll text them back with the answer to specifically what they were asking about. And that we call that Elise on the line. So there's kind of like levels of our voice solution, and the lowest one of that is our IVR solution, where we manage your phone trees for you. And one of the options is press 1 to text with an agent. But all that's transcribed, and it kind of makes for a full solution across all of your marketing platforms, as well as your entire like contact center. Yeah, it's all the same AI. There's no kind of handoff between different tools. All in one report. It's an all-in-one solution.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then
nuts,
I guess
yeah.
the
Pretty
people side,
robust.
yeah. So I guess like the people side of this, like, so you're running basically operations. It sounds like is part of what your team's job is to kind of like add the human element to how do we make this better? Like, how do we, look at what's happening and train the model better or add more? I imagine a lot of what you're doing is probably just adding more data up front to the back end to decision better.
So my teams are like all the client-facing teams except for sales. So like onboarding and support. And so there's like constant feedback loop from our customers on what we need to build next, and how an agent would respond to something, and we can constantly learn and kind of improve our ability to upsell, or we just kind of build more features. If anybody reaches out and is like, I would love to be able to send around, and this is like a real example, I can see all my contacts on the back end, and I'd really love to be able to have my teams reach out when the price changes on these units. If I have a bunch of people that are explicitly interested in these units that are going through a price drop. And we were like, okay, well, instead of us like giving like classic CRM, right? Like instead of us giving you a place where you can filter for those types of people with those preferences, doesn't it make more sense for us to just build a feature for the AI to just email everybody when it's so like, it's we have our own CRM, which I think is like what works really well for folks that are working out of a spreadsheet, or not even there, buying their like second or third single family home and need support. It is not a CRM though, or a client relationship management tool. It's not in that we don't self-serve this data to you. Like you can watch and see the conversations, but the goal is always for where a regular CRM would give you a button or a filter or a way to build a campaign. Our goal is to give you visibility into the campaign we're going to automatically run for you. And so every time we get a reach out from our customers, or we learn about something changing in their workflow, we're always serving that to the product team to build. And then from a model perspective, we do have a percentage of conversations, and it fluctuates based on kind of the volume of, or kind of like leasing volume or conversation volume on the resident side. But a percentage of conversations are always going through our AI training team. And I think that gives a lot of our customers like a lot of, they feel really safe knowing that there's like humans that look at these models or like look at these conversations and validate what the AI is about to say. You hear some crazy stories about AI, what it's called hallucinating and giving some weird answers to questions. And we're not in a position, right, where we have to answer every single prospect's question. Like if somebody comes and asks us to tell them a joke, that's going to get handed off to a human. And we're not gonna like try and produce an AI joke and
you're not trying to be everything to all people. If someone comes crazy, like I'm about to go jump
hand it off to a human.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So some of those like weird AI conversations that you see in the news, like we're not that kind of an AI or conversation.
Are you guys handling emergencies? Like I know one thing, and I mean, like I started a management company. We were eventually managing 5,000 properties, and emergency resolution, I think, is probably one of the top two most sophisticated and hardest to teach things, because no matter how long I've been doing this, I still hear about things. I just interviewed someone yesterday. I said, give me your craziest landlording story. And it was a woman called the emergency hotline for the company because she was stuck next to the toilet in her bathroom. And
Oh no.
Yeah, and unfortunately, their emergency team at the time didn't get to it that day. So then she called 911, and the fire department came in and literally like ripped the bathroom apart when there was easier solutions to it than what they chose.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, where I was going was I'm never shocked at the difference. There's just so many things that come up in emergencies, and I think they're really hard to train even people on. I'm sure AI is tricky too. Do you guys get into that?
Yeah. So sentiment analysis is something we are we have lightly. We're constantly working on. When I first joined the company, there was one team member because there's like the machine learning team, and then there's like the engineering team, right? Like there's folks that straddle both and like have a machine learning background, but there's kind of like the scientists, and then there's the engineers. We've got this like group of scientists that are kind of like floating about the business, a little bit more philosophical than the rest of us that are like dealing with the grind of like the day-to-day, right?
Right.
And I remember speaking to one of them over lunch, and I was like, what are you working on right now? And he was like, expletives. And I was like, what do you mean expletives? And he's like, well, sometimes people use an expletive because they're excited or happy. And sometimes they use an expletive because they're really mad. And like, or sometimes they just use expletives constantly. And it's just kind of like built into their mundane, like cadence of speaking.
Right. In particular, people from the state of New Jersey, it seems like.
And like sentiment analysis is super hard. Like when you start to think about the nuances of like when somebody uses an expletive, like it takes a lot of training and modeling to get that right. And we're in some cases, like we're independently building these things. Like models don't exist already. And we have our scientists here like independently building some of this functionality. Same thing with people just saying like, yeah, no, or no, yeah, like which one is it? Is it yeah or is it no? These models.
Anything like surprise you? As you guys have probably leased a lot of properties. You're in a way sort of you're not a management company, but you're definitely seeing a lot of pieces of management. I don't know, at really big numbers. I don't know, anything that like you wouldn't have expected maybe going in.
The conversation I had right before I joined this call, we were talking about the move-in process. And I was sitting with one of our product developers, and they were asking me about how that works today. And they were really surprised that like for a line share of people, when you walk into your unit day of, and you fill out, is my sink working? Is my toilet working? You kind of fill out the state of the apartment when you first go in. Yep. It's typically like on a piece of paper, and you need to like bring it back within 48 hours. And so they're talking about like they have been talking about the best way to get this through questions, or kind of like ensure that we get it faster and help turn this into maintenance requests and kind of automate this process. And it was like, oh, no, it's a piece of paper right now. They're like, oh, like, can we see the data? They're like, oh, we can probably get like years of data from people, so we can see what kinds of things, how often things are broken, and kind of understand the value of it. I'm like, no, it goes into a box in the leasing office. and what happens from that? Like, do they digitize it? I'm like, no, it goes into the box in the leasing office. Like, that's where it goes.
Right. And then like a work order is made, but it's not even tied to the original, it's
hopefully. And then we keep them for however many years until I guess the next person, until they move out, and you do actually check against
even something more simple
like,
of like did everyone even get a move-in form? I mean, maybe.
I know, and it's so funny speaking with like these incredibly sophisticated developers, right? And like I'm being like, welcome to real estate. Like,
yeah,
we've got, there's so much to do here. It's like it's exciting. But I guess that's the surprise, is like when you bring people from other industries into PropTech, the opportunity is like so great. it's really exciting.
Yeah, I don't know if this will, I talk about this once in a while on the podcast, but I was in ad tech before this, and I saw tech infiltrate ad tech over like a decade, when the industry was just had not been touched. And so it was a really fun place to be, because the opportunity was so great. You could be average and you were going to be successful, because there just weren't enough people who understood tech in this industry. You were in the small minority of what was going to be the people leading this industry in a very short amount of time. And I feel like real estate's kind of the same way. That, I mean, I know people talk about PropTech, but like, how many real technology companies are there in real estate, like that are actually gotten real funding, and not just like seed funding, but actually doing something? There's actually not that many.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a small number, and therefore a very small number of people who actually are dealing with these problems that still tie into like huge, renting out a unit that may cost $1,500 or $2,000 to rent. Like, every day matters. Like, every day that sits there costs somebody another $10 or $5 or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a gigantic, it's quite an industry to commit yourself to working in. I remember when I was considering coming over here, I've known Minna, the CEO, for like 6-7 years. This company started a couple years after mine, and we were both in kind of a niche, a niche market as like a female CEOs. And her husband is our CTO here. My husband was my CPO at my company. It was kind of like this weird overlapping of our lives. So naturally we are connected, and have been kind of keeping up with each other's lives for years before I joined this company. But I say that to say, like, when I was considering where I was going to go next after selling the business and working at Alfred to merge them together, I would always ask, it's such a cheesy question, but I would ask people like, why did you start this business? Or like, why? What's your big purpose? And for Minna, our CEO, it was about being good and being great. So serving the most number of people in a way that's like the most impactful. And obviously it would make sense we would start in housing. Like, this is where you live, and everybody needs a house. Like, it's like the most number of people, and you can have like the biggest impact on their lives. Our next industry is healthcare. So that's like the living bit of the living. But I think it's really cool that was the intent, right? Was like, when you come into this industry, you are impacting something so essential to the living experience. Like, you are impacting where people literally put their head down to sleep at night. It's kind of it's kind of a wild space to be in.
I have one final question, and that is, so I ask everyone when we close out here, what is something that they're interested or excited about over the next couple of years, kind of in this intersection of real estate and tech? And it's funny, over the last 6 months, like, the most common answer has been AI. Oh man, it's so interesting. You are the beholden one here. So what? I mean, I think
I guess I got to get more niche than that then.
Yeah, you need to get more niche. That's what I was gonna say. And by the way, I don't let people just say AI. That's like a way common answer that doesn't even mean anything to most people. So more specific, if you can. Is there something that you're excited about? Could be at your company, could be overall, but kind of real estate and tech coming together, things that you think that will evolve and change, that you think are like, this is really interesting, that maybe people aren't thinking about or talking about over the next few years.
Yeah, voice AI, definitely. Like I said, I've been sitting through all the engineers in our open office plan, like, tell me a joke, tell me a joke, tell me a joke, again and again with these voice AIs, trying to get their inflection really human-like. And I feel like that's like a big overarching one, but I'm actually like a little bit more nerdy of an answer. I'm really, really excited for how like knowledge banking is changing. We are currently using kind of like structured data, like certain number of fields and we ask certain questions, we get certain information from like structured data inside, systems that we integrate with, like your property management system, if you're big enough, or your client relationship management system, like, and just like ILSs that are like, what are your amenities? What's your move-in
bedroom,
policy?
bathroom,
Like,
square footage, all kinds of different like inputs.
and it's like a set number of questions we're asking based on like us thinking, okay, what kinds of things are people going to ask about? What I'm really excited for is like, we're getting to the place where like those lists can be expansive. So like every time we have to hand off a question about the mover running away with somebody's things, we've got to escalate that to somebody based on how the steps they took, or the information that they gave to the resident, or I guess prospect, maybe in that case. We can bank that information in like a more flexible way. Like we can just constantly keep learning things. A French restaurant opens up next door and someone can be like, cool French restaurant next door. And now we can like figure out how to insert that in conversations in a way more dynamic way. Because it's not like insert fun fact, or like, you know what I mean? It's not like it's not a structured field. It's just like, we can learn anything that we're exposed to. And that's an us thing. That's again, emerging technology. So AI across the board is going to be navigating like how to scale that. And I think we're definitely the first in our space in real estate to be touching it. But again, it's like new invention, super exciting.
Yeah, it's super cool. And also I think like, as I've done sales in my life, the biggest key to selling and anything, whether it's a leasing or anything else, is like, can you match someone's need with a solution, basically?
Yeah.
And to do that, what makes humans so great at it is you don't just need structured data. You can actually like keep going down that list, and someone has a very unique need and we can match it because we know this place actually has that somewhere in its ability set to find it. I think it like makes total sense. It's like super interesting that you're not just limited to like bedroom, bathroom, square footage, and 5 amenities, but like the list could over time be, hundreds of things long. That's just learning that are helpful in very specific examples for specific people. You wouldn't want to take the time to make a structured data set for, because it's not that important. But when it's important, it's really important.
And it's this like investment in us not having to be the middleman anymore, like operators not having to be the middleman. Like I don't have to, as the area changes, I don't have to guess what new kinds of questions potential prospects are going to be asking now that like it's gentrified, or now that it's more of a metropolitan, or, as the area changes, like the questions people are asking are training the answerer on what kinds of things they're going to have to know about. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just really like cool. Real live kind of expansion of that knowledge. Yeah.
Fran,
cool.
Thanks for joining us. This is awesome. Get back to your saving millions of lives. I know you have a busy day, busy life, building tech for millions of people. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Real Estate Hackers Show. If you've not yet become a member of Real Estate Hackers, you can do that for free at realestatehackers.com. Get access to all the amazing real estate hacker deals from incredible vendors, a ton of content and materials for you, the investor. You can follow Real Estate Hackers on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. If you can give us a 5-star review for the podcast, I would personally really appreciate it. We read every review, and thank you so much for helping us grow this community for you, the real estate investor.